The moment you make it back to Mohg's bachelor pad and see a white draped knight is when history is finally made. And after a brief moment of respite and finally getting to hear what this chick sounds like,
were you guided here by kindly Mikola?
You get to experience death again. And again. And again. And that's right, you guessed it, you foul-tarnished. Again. When the DLC of a 2-year-old game qualifies for the hottest moment of the year, I'm not joking, this thing is boiling like crazy, dog. You know something big is afoot. And don't worry, there will be no story spoilers in this one. Shadow of the Erdtree is From Software's biggest and most expansive DLC ever, but contrary to what evil Yoda says, size isn't the only thing that matters here. I mean, if there's one thing that the lands between were, it's diverse. From yellowy Limgrave, to the dark and rainy Weeping Peninsula, to beautiful Liurnia and mesmerizing Nokron. The lands between already offered some of the most unique locations in gaming history. And then you take that nasty hand that for some reason slips out of a giant egg, and you make it to the land of Shadow. And that giant golden tree you know so well has turned into what looks like a dying one. But by Marika, if this thing doesn't immediately awe-strike you. Thing is, From Software is known for making some incredible looking DLCs, the Ringed City from Dark Souls 3 being one of them. But Shadow of the Erdtree takes, much like The Witcher 3's Blood and Wine, the moniker of DLC seriously. In fact, I'd much rather use the olden but golden term of expansion here, since in truth that is what this is. We have entirely new areas to explore, new and interesting characters to meet, new items to procure, new armors to wear, new weapons to wield, and not even last and certainly not least, new bosses to die to. And let me tell you, the fact that FromSoft themselves said that they made some of the toughest bosses they've ever made for this one truly feels vindicating, because this thing is tough, man. Now, the consensus is that most players should be at or around level 120 to 150 when they enter this DLC, and particularly having around a vigor level of 60, you know, in order to sustain more attacks and take him on the chin. Me? I went in at level 109, which I definitely felt. And just to be clear, I consider myself a decent Elden Ring player. But this thing, it humbled me, man. I mean, don't even get me started on the massive furnace enemies trampling around this land that will send 1,000 fiery balls your way. One of the first mini-bosses you can encounter in this land is a jail boss, one that doesn't seem too harmful at first. It's your heavy armor with a big sword type dudes, so essentially my exact counterpart. Thing is though, this dude hits like a train. And this dude also hits fast like a train. I must have tried ending this guy 10 to 15 times before I finally managed to do it. An early game victory which felt so damn good, and which also happened to reshape my entire character build. You see, I'm a regular guy. I like a big sword that hits hard and some cool ass armor. The twin set and the blade of my sweet Ronnie had served me well against Mohg, but now it just didn't hit as hard. But this new armor and this new two-handed greatsword absolutely did. The Solitude armor set has quickly become one of my absolute favorite in the entire game, particularly because of that BBC, the big black cape. However, it did require a massive change. You see, the Armor of Solitude weighs 24 by itself, with the greatsword coming in at another 15.5, and that's not even mentioning the rest of the outfit. This greatsword, by the way, is a must, not just because it ends up scaling with strength at an A level at +10, but because of its absolutely sick L2 moveset. Truly, this thing is exactly what I want from a greatsword. It has a long-range first attack, which then follows up with a massively strong punishing move that will often stagger or straight up toss enemies away on their backs. And I wanted it all, top to bottom coverage, plus the possibility of a shield. But of course, due to the nature of weapon scaling and weight and leveling in Elden Ring, this meant that I was seeing two characters in particular a lot more than before. Our trusty in-house armorer was working overtime to level up each new weapon I came across, and Renala, sweet mother of sweetlings Renala, kept rebirthing me for every larval tear I gave her. And let me be clear, I gave her a lot. And even though this respecking and upgrading could have been mitigated by Elden Ring having a completely different weapon scaling system, it meant that Shadow of the Erdtree, due to its large number of awesome new weapons with different scalings, forced me to actually spend my larval tears and actually experiment with new builds and weapon types like never before. And this is a big strength of this DLC, the fact that it offers you so much cool new stuff as you go, whether you find it laying around in the world like the backhand blade, the Milady light grade sword, or if you happen to get them off a boss, which, let's be real, often offers some of the most badass movesets you've ever seen, like the Twin Blades of Relana, which allows you to either shoot out magic with its L2 R1 attacks or conjure up a Fireblade Storm with L1 R2, and it looks so damn sick. Thankfully, the Land of Shadow offers up a ton of high-level smithing stones often dropped by random enemies, which means that if you're worried about those level 7 and 8 types, you don't have to worry as much as you used to. I mentioned earlier that Shadow of the Erdtree humbled me, and I can't reiterate enough that as a masochist, I'm not exactly above being humbled by a tall demi-chick with 2 swords. But even I have limits. Shadow of the Erdtree's first true boss, which you'll meet within the first hour or 2 of game time, does itself pose a massive challenge. Not only does it hit hard, but its phase 2 is so punishing that it will likely take you several tries just to know when to get a hit in. Now, nothing is perfect, and I'll stand my ground and say that some bosses feel a lot more intuitive and quote-unquote fair than others. The Lionhead boss is one I personally didn't like as much because I'm generally not a fan of constant chaotic elements as a factor, and since I'm mostly a close-range fighter, I'm usually at a disadvantage with a boss that often leaps up into the sky and deals massive AoE damage in the vicinity around them on the ground. Thankfully for me though, who's certainly not above using NPCs and Mimic Tears for help, I was able to utilize their strengths to deal with this tyrant of an enemy. But the same cannot be said for my biggest adversary thus far in perhaps the entirety of Elden Ring. A boss I spent hours and hours and hours on, is incredibly tough, yet might just be my favorite boss in the DLC, and this one I would consider fairly fair, although with a ton of surprises. This is an optional boss, by the way, one FromSoft already showed off in the official launch trailer, so I don't consider this spoiling. But if you do, and you don't want to see its different phases, then feel free to skip ahead to this point in the video. And yes, the boss is a giant freaking sunflower, what about it? But this sunflower must have OD'd on photosynthesis, because not only is it giant and mean, it also deals an incredible amount of damage, and makes use of quick attacks that can be hard to dodge. Because if it's not for the massive arms with incredible reach you need to dodge, and if it's not for the punishing headbangs that threaten to smash you into the golden liquid floor, it might just be the bloody thorns coming out of the ground that does it for you. And by does it, I mean killing you. On top of that, this thing has 2 damage points, its stem, which is easier to hit but soaks up a ton of damage dealt, and its face, which is where you really want to go to bring the heat. Of course, doing so is easier said than done, at least if you're a melee build. And I tried and finally I did it. But wait, the boss's health bar went away, but there's more. Oh fuck, another health bar, awesome! And not just that, you now have to deal with a more aggro flower that literally comes at you fast like Sonic. But okay, this is the second phase, and after several more tries, I finally did that too. But wait, a third health bar shows up, and now the flower is doing this giant light thing, and oh god, oh no, I'm dead again. Sometimes the bosses of this game take you for a ride, and this is certainly one of them. You can only imagine my joy when I figured out that those explosions of light, which essentially completely drains my health bar, can be dodged through. And when the thing finally was at super low health and it did the light thing again, I dodged. It felt so good and I was sure I was scot-free. But then, it does it again, and again, and my health bar is suddenly at an absolute minimum. This is that point of no return, the point where I'm literally thinking, what the hell? I can either heal up and pray that I get another opportunity to strike, or I can rush in, give it all, and take the initiative while the flower has a short period of downtime. And that's exactly what I do. Finally getting that killing blow is precisely what Elden Ring and Souls games are all about. Finally making it after you've spent so much time beating your head against the wall. It took me a few days, several resting periods, going other places, and trying entirely new strategies to do it. But after it all, everything felt worth it. And that's the thing about Shadow of the Erdtree. It makes you experiment. Play with different builds and strategies to tackle its new and punishing enemies. And whether you call in a few favorites from NPCs or do it all by yourself, it feels incredibly rewarding every time. Of course, getting to these bosses in the first place is a challenge in itself, but what's so fun about this expansion is that its areas offer so many branching paths and hidden routes. And like with the bosses, if you're finicky about seeing some of these areas, then I suggest you skip ahead to this point. You'll enter this DLC and see all of these hotspots, thinking you'll get there soon enough, but then figure out that, that thing is way down there, or how the heck do I even get up there? Much more so than the lands between, the Land of Shadow is filled with these challenges related to travel and discovery. It's such a cool concept to have an important castle offer multiple routes by which to reach different areas. But the fact is that even though there are many optional areas in this DLC, you'll have to explore and often re-explore an area to find out how to get to the next one. In the beginning stages of this DLC, I was after a few hours kinda hoping for more honestly, since while the sight of a massive tree is alluring, it would be nice with some more variety, and a variety that wasn't just constantly dark or rainy. And wouldn't you know, once I had explored the halls of a dreary castle and facing some extremely nasty creatures, I was rewarded with one of the most beautiful sights in the game, a sight that finally offered me some of that same feeling I'd gotten back when I first stepped into the Liurnia of the Lakes region. There's just something magical about entering a region that's so not Dark Souls coded, and for a while now, I wanted a FromSoft game that doesn't only take place in a dreary as can be place. The Ancient Ruins region offers up some of that feeling, and it really means a lot. But even here, exploration is the name of the game, and if there's one thing that both I and Shadow of the Erdtree keep coming back to, it is precisely that sense of uncovering where to go next. Because whether we're talking navigating your way through maze-like ruins to find your way higher and higher, or jumping onto hanging sculptures to reach your next site of grace, Shadow of the Erdtree excels at this sense of discovery, that arch Dark Souls discovery. And truly, whether in legacy dungeons or out in the open world, more than ever does Elden Ring offer those intense and dense moments of gameplay that Dark Souls once did, and it's even better for it. There is so much more to Shadow of the Erdtree than what I've mentioned here. In fact, there's a ton more. But I think I'll leave it here for now, and perhaps come back with a deeper full review at a later time. But for now, if you haven't heard it enough times already, Shadow of the Erdtree will stand as a testament to the triumph that is Elden Ring, and having this new parallel region standing side by side with the already massive lands between, it's almost overwhelming honestly. What a uniquely large and spectacular game we have here, just truly unmatched in both quality and quantity. And if it's not clear enough, comes highly recommended for any Elden Ring player out there, even though it probably won't change your mind about the game if you're not interested to begin with, as what we're getting here is essentially a perfection and extension of the base game, not something completely new. Let me know what you think of Shadow of the Erdtree and this video in the comments, and remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!